depend on natural resources, forestry, to feed, clothe, shelter, and transport us. Without natural resources, prosperity is out of reach. And that theme from 1909 carries us right into 2020s and 2025s and 25's 25, because without natural resources, prosperity is out of reach. Louisiana forests were not always as abundant as they are today. In 1947, when the Louisiana Forestry Association was organized, our forest land was denuded. We did not have many trees getting replanted after harvest. The idea back in 1947s were to cut and then move on to somewhere else. And that began to change in 1947. In 1947, the forestry organization was organized, and our mission was to reforest Louisiana. And since that time, we have done such a great job that today our forests, and this is quite a remarkable feat, we are growing more, 70% more wood in our forests than what we're taking out. This has been both a blessing and a challenge. The blessing is that we have trees. It's good for wildlife, good for carbon capture, good for the products that we produce. But with more trees growing than what we're taking out, we run into an issue of overstocking, the susceptibility of insects and disease, and really our forests were not as well managed as they needed to be. And that all changed just about 3-4 years ago when Mills, it's like suddenly there was an epiphany around the rest of the country that, hey, we ought to be looking at Louisiana again. They have a great resource. Let's bring industry to Louisiana. And since that time, we've had four new sawmills come to the state, and they're all in various phases of getting up and organized. Each of those sawmills is about a $150 million investment. Each of those hire between 150 and 200 people. And the great thing is that these are not in the cities, but they're in rural areas. They're keeping our young men and women in rural communities with good paying jobs and helping them raise a family, be productive at home in their rural areas. And those sawmills are very much a traditional part of forest industry. That's the sheltering part of forest industry that we talk about. I want to talk a little bit about the transportation part of forestry. A few years ago, under the past administration, there was an emphasis and interest to move away from fossil fuel production, looking at renewables, and renewables everywhere from wind to solar and other geothermal, and we began talking a little bit about the biofuels, recycling and the biofuels that we could generate. Biofuel industry in Louisiana has started coming to the state, and they're looking at producing a biofuel that would make a wood pellet that would be transported around the world and replace coal in many countries with a renewable fuel. There's also liquid fuels. There's a plant up in northeast Louisiana that is online to, once they get permitting all done, online to produce a biofuel. That biofuel, it was funny, I had asked the owner of that company, I said, how much of that material that you're going to be producing is coming to Louisiana? He said, none of it. None of it. We're going to use the Louisiana resource, but we'll be loading it all in tank cars and sending it out to California. California's renewable fuel mandate basically is moving away from fossil fuels and they'll be using more and more renewable fuels, and wood is certainly going to be providing that source. Another plant in Louisiana in our border with Texas is looking at a sustainable aviation fuel, making aviation fuel out of wood. And you say, well, how can they do that? I thought I just burned wood for heat and that. But when you look at the chemical composition of wood, basic elements of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and when you apply heat to that, you can basically turn wood into a fabric that you can wear, a food that you can eat. The sugars from wood can be made out of wood chips, and then the renewable fuel that can be made out of wood. So it's quite exciting that these new plants are looking at using our resource, using this extra amount of wood that we're growing for meeting these demands for renewable fuels. Now, we heard of terms like carbon capture and storage, injection wells, and all of that. And a lot of that has been an incentive with previous administrations. They've put a lot of tax money into encouraging that kind of investment. What the new administration will do with that investment still remains to be seen. That question was asked to many of these renewable fuel plants, and we asked them, is this a one and done situation? Are we moving away from all this carbon capture and storage? And they said not really, because still the big plants, the Amazons, the Walmarts, the Microsofts and all still want to be friendly to the environment, still want to reduce their carbon footprint, and they still, according to these companies, still believe that there will be a market for incentives, for contributions coming to these companies to continue their work at carbon capture. Our trees, 15 million acres of trees, half the state of Louisiana, is capturing carbon every day. Every day. The photosynthetic process, and that's as technical as I'll get with you, the photosynthetic process takes carbon out of the atmosphere every day. We don't have to do anything about it. It's just doing it and turning it into a solid wood that carbon is captured in that wood, so that when we cut that tree and make a home or make furniture, that carbon is captured for years and years to come. The extra amount with the industry coming in and the carbon that they're generating from their manufacturing process, the incentives there is to try and capture that carbon, inject it into the ground in very deep wells and in a safe manner. And that's the big question. Is it done safely? Is it done in a way that is beneficial to our landowners, to the economy, and to the whole issue of capturing carbon? From the standpoint of the landowner wants to keep their forests as forests. And the reason for that is they like the land. A lot of people may say that, well, people don't care about the land. All they're interested in is cutting it and then leaving it alone. Well, that's not the case in Louisiana. In Louisiana and all across the South, where most of the land is privately owned, the commitment, the stewardship, the sustainability of this resource is when I cut, I replant, and then move on. So the landowner sees an opportunity with these facilities that come in and want to put wells on their property to see if they can drop an injection well to do that. Offers the landowner an incentive to make that possible. So before all of that is even done. There's tremendous permitting and all of that. And up in northeast Louisiana, when we talked about the biofuels up in that area, that whole project was a community-wide effort. Community got behind the project. They understood what the company was doing, and they saw a benefit to doing it. In some other parts of the state, the carbon capture has not gone as smooth as one would like. It's been done kind of haphazardly. There's been a poor public information campaign along the way, and when people don't understand something, the normal reaction is, I'm opposed to it. So if carbon capture is going to occur in this state, and if injection wells are going to incur and happen in this state, it is going to require a whole lot different carbon capture and a commitment to better promote and better understand public awareness of what is going on. The benefit of all this to the landowner is that they get resources to keep their land, keep their forests as forests. They sell their main products for homes, for paper, for plywood, for furniture. One thing we don't talk much about, and that is the benefit that our forests play for wildlife. We're all interested in the wildlife in Louisiana, and the best tool for wildlife is forest management. Keeps the forest young, keeps the forest healthy. Hunting and fishing is a big item in Louisiana, and because our forests are producing good habitat for wildlife, and our forests are managed to protect our waters, that both fish and wildlife and terrestrial wildlife are all beneficiaries of the forest resource. So our forests are big, our forests are growing, and we have a wonderful opportunity to move forward. Someone asked about the tax incentives that we see. If the new administration decides that the federal government is going to move away from investing tax dollars, public dollars into carbon capture and storage, we'll have to see about the local industry that will continue to support it. But the other item that is very beneficial in Louisiana, and that's our state agencies. Our Louisiana Workforce Investment Council that helps train people when they come into Louisiana. Many of the companies that are coming into the state are saying the benefit of Louisiana Workforce Commission and helping to train people is a plum for Louisiana, that it is very helpful to us. The economic development, Department of Economic Development, and the incentives there to help people come in and utilize our resource. All this is important. All this will help our forests continue to grow, and our landowners to prosper, and for forestry and that to grow. And Mr. Pinchot, again, back when he said, without natural resources, prosperity is out of reach. Louisiana is a great place to grow and to prosper, and we will continue to do that with the public support for what we do. I'll take some questions if you have any. Yes?
So you talk about how we need to have more industry coming to the state in order to utilize the timber that is available. You say that is outpacing greatly the replanting that we are cutting down. So what kind of industries do you feel that we need more of, even though we have the 4 new mills? What else would really be good for Louisiana?
Question is, what kind of mills in Louisiana would be most beneficial? We have the sawmills, and they take the larger material. But in forestry, the forests go through stages, and the young trees that need thinning so that we can prevent wildfires, the markets for small diameter, low valued wood are extremely important. And that's where these biofuel plants come in very well. Because the biofuel plants don't want the big material, they want the small material that will make their products. So these new mills that are coming in, the biofuel mills, will come in and utilize our small diameter material.
So those 4 mills that you mentioned earlier that are on the process of coming up, are those all biofuel or some of them big timber?
The big timber, the 4 sawmills that are coming in are the big timber. Right now we have, let's see, about 4 biofuel plants and a few more that are looking at Louisiana. So if those biofuel plants get the permitting and all come in together, that would be a tremendous boost to our forest economy. Yes?
I think at the moment we are shipping pellets out of Louisiana at the moment to England. With these large sawmills, I understand things like dust and such will end up in pegboard or whatever. Might they feed or have adjacent to them biofuel plants that would use their waste product, let's say? Is that a possibility?
Certainly is. The question is, with these new sawmills that are coming in, the chips, the sawdust and that comes from the manufacturing of lumber, is that ideal for biofuel plants? The question is absolutely yes. In Baton Rouge, the port of Baton Rouge exports about 40,000 tons of wood pellets every month. You all see it when you cross the George Wilkerson Bridge. You see these 2 big white domes. I had people asking about those big white domes. They thought it was some kind of NASA project, some space project. Each of those domes hold 40,000 tons of wood pellets. And when those ships come in, they load those ships with that. And the interesting thing with that, I know you don't want to know all this, but the interesting thing with this is that it has to be loaded dry. You don't want that ship halfway across the Atlantic when those wood pellets get wet and they start expanding. It would be a very interesting ride for the rest of the way to Europe. But the market is in Europe. The Drax facility in Europe has already converted, I think, 7 of their 8 coal-fired boilers to wood, and it is a reality. You have a Drax facility in Gloucester right next to a new sawmill in Mississippi. You have one Drax facility up in northeast Louisiana where a paper mill using small diameter material had closed. They picked up the slack and produce chips, produce pellets, and bring them down here. So yes, in these new facilities, there is work going on right now trying to identify where those next pellet plants will be. And it may be pellet, it may be a liquid fuel. Yes?
I'm curious how the biofuel industry shapes out with the recent executive order that declares a national emergency for energy, expediting energy licenses and cutting back regulations. Does this lower the incentives for biofuels?
That is a very good question. Will this new executive order make for changes in renewable fuels? That remains to be seen how that plays out. But any way that we can encourage more renewable fuels, I don't think this current administration wants to put public dollars into this. They would much prefer the private investment to make this happen. And the indications that we're seeing are that private industry, the Amazons, the Walmarts, the Microsofts, are still interested in biofuels and maybe putting that resource behind that. And then, of course, you have Japan, you have Europe, doing that kind of work, and the up in northeast Louisiana recently announced, it's public information, that a Japanese firm who is committed to biofuels partnered with Louisiana Green Fuels, the facility there in Caldwell Parish, Columbia, to produce a liquid fuel. So it appears that private investment is going to drive this issue, and that will all be beneficial. Oh, the lady, one of you had asked a question.
Oh, well, my question was, mills, so many mills closed a few years back, and now new mills are coming in. Are they taking the place of those old mills? Or, I mean, the old mills that closed were paper mills, and these are different. Are they replacing or?
Question was, some of the mills that closed, and these were basically paper mills that had closed. What are these new mills coming in utilizing that? The answer is yes. They're using the infrastructure that those mills that closed had. They had good roads into the mills. They had a source of gas, natural gas. They had electricity. It was a great opportunity to match that in. Pineville, Louisiana, is one where a paper mill closed years ago, and a new plant called Sun Gas Renewables is there that will be making a hydrogen gas that will be used in the shipping industry. Now, think about that. You have shipping magnates, shipping concerns that are building ships that will be powered by hydrogen gas. And each of these ships, I understand, is like $200 million to build a ship powered by hydrogen gas. So that commitment that is driving our renewable resources towards hydrogen certainly looks like it will be a reality, even without the federal government saying we're going to do this. So the new mills, to answer your question, the facilities that closed are being utilized again for the new plants. Yes, sir. Yes?
What is the association and the industry's position on the sale or trading of carbon credits against forested acreage, which prohibits them from being harvested for as long as 40 years?
There's a growing market. We talk about carbon capture. There are businesses out there that recognize that trees are capturing carbon, and they want to be able to sell those carbon credits to industry that don't have trees, that are producing products that are generating greenhouse gases, and this would be an offset for that to happen. There are some very reputable firms out there dealing with carbon capture, and the issue that a family needs to think about is when you're talking about these markets, you're talking about 20, 40, and even longer years. And the question is, do you want to tie up your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren's decision to work the land for today's benefit? Some of these companies, there's not that many of them, but these companies are recognizing that. They're trying to get landowners to sign. Why would a landowner do that? Well, they may have their land in an area that is heavily regulated, that they can't harvest trees, or it's in a wetland area that it will never be developed and the trees will be growing. How do I generate income there to help pay the taxes? That may be a benefit to help make that happen. Yes, back. Yes, sir.
Next week, I understand y'all know, and I know you probably have working with them in a lot of capacity. Will you be here next Monday as well? Because the question that I would probably would be better that both of y'all at the same time.
I'm not sure I understood the question.
This coming Monday?
This coming month, If I'm invited to that, I would be happy. But I don't think I have, that's not on my calendar. But we can talk about that, and I would be happy. Yep. You had another question?
The legislature is really mulling how locals in the state can get, tax revenue from these carbon sequestration projects, especially the ones that are on private land that they don't really get a lot of money from. Are there already, various tax revenues that come from the forestry industry that goes towards the state and locals, or do you think there should in order to get more buy-in from local and state government?
Question is, with carbon, how are local governments benefiting from this, and what other type of benefits do local governments have with forest products? When solid wood or our small diameter wood is harvested, in Louisiana there is a tax associated with that, and 75% of that tax stays with local government. 25% comes to the state, and of that portion, some of that goes back into reforestation. With the carbon capture and storage, there are provisions, and I think the breakdown is 40% state, 30% local. There's a breakdown on the carbon capture payments to local government. I think the issue is local governments are saying it's happening in our area. Should we be getting more than just what we're getting now? And like anything else, it's a matter of money and how will the local governments support that and keep the landowners healthy and investing in their forest. Yes, ma'am.
Forestry management is a big topic right now with California and the wildfires. What does your association do, or can you do, to promote good practices in Louisiana?
We all are saddened by the tragedy occurring in California with the wildfires. And the lady's question is, what do we do in Louisiana to try and prevent similar occurrences here? In Louisiana, we operate in a sustainable way through what we call our recommended forest best management practices. And our loggers and our landowners are all trained in that to be sure that our lands are managed in a sustainable way. For example, when we harvest trees, within 2 years, that land has to be reforested. We work with our state that does a remarkable job with their fire crews to help us do prescribed burning to prevent wildfires. Fire can be good and bad. A good fire is a prescribed fire. It doesn't travel the forest floor more than 3-4 feet tall. A bad fire, a wildfire, that fire can be 100 feet going through a forest, and that can be devastating, as it is out in California. Are we immune to wildfires because we do forest management? No, we're not. In 2023, we had 60,000 acres burned up in northwest Louisiana. And unfortunately, most of our wildfires are caused by arson people that think it's the way that I get my message out. Instead of sitting down and talking, my message is to go burn you down. And the second leading cause of wildfires is people burning debris outside their house, leaving the fire, walking away, thinking, oh, it'll be out and I won't have to worry about it. Wind picks up, and the next thing you know, you have a major wildfire. But to answer your question, sustainable forestry is what we do, and the data shows that we are growing more trees in our forests than we're harvesting every year, and that is the reason that we have industry coming. In other parts of the country, they're closing mills. In Louisiana, we're opening mills. Yes, sir, you had a...
Is there an
solar, of overcoming the financial benefits of a tree farm or hunting leases, et cetera, as we see in Port Allen, or from what we hear from our chemical industry along the river, that they want to put solar, but then we find it's in West Feliciana or East Feliciana, which apparently would be food producing or forest producing areas. Is that not a threat?
I have not seen yet a forest growing under a solar panel farm. And when that happens, I would probably be a little more favorable about solar panels than I am today. We're using prime agricultural lands for solar panels. We're using forest land for solar panels. That's taking away forest resources, natural resources for other things. I was talking with a legislator one time, and she said, you know, why don't we build solar panels in shopping malls, in the parking lot? It's so hot there in the parking lot. Why don't we just build tall solar panels? And I said, you know, that's a wonderful thought. No one would mind that at all. Probably be cooler when you get out of your car, walk into the shopping mall, and it'll be generating electricity for that. But to answer your question, yes, we have a concern when we're losing forest land to uses that, again, remember what I said, the objective of a landowner is to keep forests as forests, and anything contrary to that is something that we have some issues with. Lewis?
We, as the United States, we import a lot of timber from Canada. Would a tariff affect the Louisiana timber industry?
You know, it's remarkable the amount of wood that we import from Canada. A lot of paper mills in Louisiana that made newsprint have closed. That paper comes in from Canada. I heard, I guess, someone talking about rebuilding in California. And I think it was the Los Angeles Times. Los Angeles Times said, building costs are going to go high because we have to import all of our lumber to rebuild California from Canada. And my thoughts were, you have mills that have closed in the Pacific Northwest because they could not get any timber. Why not encourage mills in Louisiana, in California and the West Coast to produce the needed material to rebuild California? Sometimes it's the general public wants to rebuild, but sometimes they miss the point that's right under their nose. Local mills can produce all of the wood that California needs to rebuild. They don't need to bring it from Canada. Question? Yes?
Has there been any progress with the cypress trees in South Louisiana protecting our coast?
Cypress, question is, any progress on cypress trees protecting our coast? The number one, the most prevalent tree in Louisiana is the bald cypress. Over in Cat Island, just up in the Feliciana parishes, the nation's largest bald cypress exists on Cat Island. Everybody has a story about cypress, and the cypress is plentiful, and there was some legislation a couple years ago that would really limit the forester's ability to manage cypress. There was almost a prohibition about harvesting cypress on state lands. Now that may sound good, but if you're not managing it, if man is not managing it, you're leaving it susceptible to insects, disease, and fires. So a little bit of management on these lands go a long way. The cypress resource, there's very little market for cypress. There certainly could be a bigger market for cypress to manage that, But that cypress is growing. It'll be protecting the coast, and there's no change really in that.
I was just thinking about some incentives because of the, for instance, Ivor Van Heerden's book talked about the vast removal of cypress and being a major cause of damage from things like Hurricane Katrina, et cetera.
There's been very little removal of cypress in Louisiana. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us where these new mills are going to be? You talked about pellets in Northeast.
Yes.
You said something about sulfates or something. Can you be more specific about that?
Sure. Where are the mills, the new mills that are coming in? Let's start with the solid wood products. The first one started in LaSalle Parish, a community called Urania. Another one is over in Taylor, Louisiana, which is in Bienville Parish. Another one is in Plain Dealing, Louisiana, up in, I think that is Bossier Parish. And then coming down along the western border, you've got in DeRidder, Canfor is open shop there, and then a facility that had closed for a long time in DeQuincy is now owned and operated by Interfor. Interesting thing with Canfor and Interfor, and even the Plain Dealing plant, these were all Canadian firms. Now, why would you think that Canada is coming to Louisiana to invest monies in our forest resources? Main reason is that in Canada, because of their management, they've had an awful lot of insect infestation, and the forest resources in Canada take twice as many years to mature as our southern forests do. So these firms from Canada are looking at a sustainable supply of resource, so they're moving to Louisiana. And again, they're employing Louisiana people, and that material is being transported. Not so much in Louisiana. Most of the lumber and that we produce does not stay in Louisiana. It goes to Chicago, it goes to the Dallas market, it goes out west. Hopefully a lot of it will go out west to rebuild the devastation in California. But
So nothing around Bogalusa or that area?
that is an area that we're really working on. Up in Lumberton, Mississippi, just north of Bogalusa, a sawmill opened there, Idaho Timber. Over in Gloucester, which is just a little east, a little west, east of Port Hudson, a new sawmill opened there. It's more favorable to operate in Mississippi oftentimes than it is in Louisiana because of taxes and insurance and things of that nature. So we are encouraging these new facilities that are coming in. Please look at the southeastern part, the boot of Louisiana, to see if we can't get some facilities there. Infrastructure, the rail line that runs east and west, the Mississippi River that can move product. We are in an ideal situation, so that can happen. The biofuel plants, you have the one in Gloucester, which is a wood pellet plant. That's over in Mississippi, though. Up in LaSalle Parish, right next, your question was, can these Drax power plants or pellet plants operate next to sawmill? Up in Urania, the pellet plant is right next to the lumber mill. And so then you go farther north up in Bastrop, there's another pellet plant in Bastrop. You come back around, Pineville, a biofuel plant, Columbia, another, that's a liquid fuel plant. Pineville is a hydrogen gas plant that they'll be making gas there. And then there's some activity, particularly along the southwest corridor, where you have liquefied natural gas, and you have opportunities there with all the array of pipelines and the injection wells that are in that area. You have industry looking at whether or not they can utilize that infrastructure for a wood pellet facility or a biofuel plant. Yes, sir.
As you're describing, I believe there's a power plant that uses rice hulls in southwest Louisiana. You haven't really discussed a blending of different products into the pellets that maybe would be useful. Is there any research or things of that nature that might extend the value of the wood pulp that you're discussing in pulp plants?
LSU Department of Energy is looking into that. Rice hulls have a different BTU, British Thermal Unit value, than wood. And when you are talking about the transportation costs from the U.S. to UK or Japan or other way, you want to be sure that you're getting maximum BTU value going. So whether or not it can be mixed still remains to be seen. When these biofuel plants become more local, producing, there's some that are looking at producing electricity in Louisiana using biofuels. Those can be blends of rice hulls, fats, agricultural waste, wood waste, all of that. Yes?
You mentioned the influence of wildlife, I think. We'll change gears for a minute. What's the status of the black bear in Louisiana? Do you know much about that?
Yes, we certainly do. The Forestry Association, back when the black bear was first being discussed as being listed as a threatened and endangered species, we organized a committee of environmental groups, forestry people, and started a process of, we called it the Black Bear Conservation Committee, and that committee worked to enhance the bear populations and to work with the bear populations and bring it back to a huntable population. I believe this year was the first year that the black bear has been on a hunted list again. Very limited number of permits were issued. You might have seen the black bear that was harvested up in the Tensas area was over 600 pounds, and just you know, a tremendous thing. And it bear populations, if they're not managed, will grow to unreasonable positions. And you see black bear in places that you had not seen black bear before. And please don't encourage it by feeding it. You want to discourage it. Move it away. Don't feed the black bear. All right. John? I see John walking around.
We have time for one more
What
question.
about the beetle situation? I know the legislature did some work on that.
Yeah, beetle situation, and very quickly, to the credit of the legislature, they had many landowners saying that trees were dying, they see beetles in the trees, and they wanted the legislature to do something. The legislature convened a committee to start looking at this. And in 2023, we had probably the worst drought that we've had in a long time. It contributed to the wildfires that we had in 2023. And along roadsides and along homes, because of the drought, trees were dying. They became weakened. And once a tree is weakened, those insects, it's like radio telemetry. They are attracted to a weakened tree, and it's not the beetles that caused the problem. It was the weakened tree due to the drought that caused it. And we may see still the loss of trees that have not yet fully recovered, even though it has rained 4 inches and we've had 10 inches of snow and all that. Those trees are still under stress. But Mississippi has been not as fortunate as we are with the southern pine beetle. The worst beetle that we have in Louisiana is called the southern pine beetle, and if that ever gets started, that would be devastating. The beetles that we have now are called IPS, IPS, and the IPS beetles generally are very constrained. They'll kill a few trees, but in the forest, we deal with that every day. But if it's next to your house, it's a whole different story. And one legislator reflected on a lady that had called him. She was up in her 80s, and she had a big pine tree right next to her bedroom. And she said, you know, this tree has died. I cannot sleep in my bed. I have to sleep in the other end of the house because I'm fearful that that tree will eventually fall on my house. And one of the outcomes that the legislature is looking at is how can we get some resources. And this will take some resources to come in and to help remove those trees, get them away from houses, get them away from power lines. And some of the utility companies, I know Clico and Entergy both, and I'm sure some of the cooperatives are working on the same thing of going along the roads and clearing trees next to power lines to make sure that they're not laying on power lines when it's the worst opportunity. All right. Thank you all very much.
I gotta get your lunch. Thank you. You did a great job.